He didn't start with a big idea. He started with rejection. Eric Yuan was a factory worker in China. Long hours, low pay, no connections. But he had one obsession. The internet would change communication. So he applied for a US visa. Rejected. Again. Rejected again. 8 times. Most people stop after 1. Some stop after 3. He stopped after 9 tries because the 10th finally worked. Not because he was special, but because he refused to quit. When he arrived in the US, he didn't arrive rich. No money, no safety net, no English confidence, just patience. He worked at WebEx, watched meetings freeze, watched people disconnect, and he hated it. Not emotionally, technically. He believed communication should feel human, not delayed, not broken. He pitched the idea. They said no, too expensive, too risky, too unnecessary. So he left, not with funding, not with hype, with doubt. For years, Zoom barely survived. No headlines, no applause, just engineers fixing problems no one praised until the world stopped. And suddenly everyone needed what Eric had been quietly building. Not overnight success, over decade patience. The world only sees the breakout. It never sees the waiting. When patience starts to hurt, Zoom didn't explode. It bled first. After Eric Yuan left WebEx, he started Zoom with one belief: video should just work. But belief doesn't pay bills. Investors weren't impressed. Video calls already existed. Skype, WebEx, Google. Why another one? Money came slow, pressure came fast. Every month was a countdown. Every payroll felt like a gamble. Eric didn't chase marketing, he chased stability. Engineers slept in the office. Bugs were fixed before sunrise. No applause, no headlines, just silent exhaustion. Competitors laughed. Too small, too late, too simple. But simplicity was the weapon. Zoom worked when others froze, connected when others dropped, stayed clear when others lagged. Still, no one cared. Because the world doesn't reward quality, it rewards attention, and Zoom had none. Yet Eric never pivoted for hype, never chased trends, never compromised the core. He chose patience over speed, pain over shortcuts. Most companies die chasing growth. Zoom survived by chasing reliability. Success looks invisible until the moment it isn't. For years, Zoom lived in the shadows. No headlines, no hype, no viral growth, just a small, quiet user base, mostly engineers, remote teams, people who cared about one thing. Does it work every time? Big companies ignored Zoom. Governments ignored Zoom. Media ignored Zoom. Because Zoom wasn't loud. It didn't promise to change the world. It promised something boring. No lag, no crash, no excuses. Behind the scenes, Eric Yuan obsessed over one metric: customer happiness. Not revenue first, not valuation, not domination. If a user complained, engineers responded personally. Sometimes Eric replied himself. Zoom lost money doing this. Time, resources, sleep. But trust was quietly compounding. Then came the irony. The world built faster internet, better cameras, more cloud tools. Yet meetings still failed. Frozen faces, dropped calls, wasted time. Everyone accepted it as normal. Eric never did. The biggest advantage Zoom had was refusing to accept good enough. And then, the world stopped moving. When the world shut down, it didn't ask for innovation. It asked for reliability. Offices closed overnight, schools panicked, families were separated by borders. Suddenly, everyone needed the same thing: to see another human face, to hear a voice without delay, to feel less alone. Companies rushed to tools they already knew. Most of them failed under pressure. Servers collapsed, calls dropped, security cracked, meetings turned into chaos. Then someone said, try Zoom. No announcement, no campaign, just desperation. And it worked, not perfectly, but consistently. One meeting became 10, 10 became 100, 100 became millions. Zoom didn't go viral because it was flashy. It went viral because it didn't break. Behind the screens, Eric Yuan didn't celebrate. He panicked. Traffic exploded faster than any model predicted. Engineers slept in shifts. Fixes were deployed in hours, not weeks. Mistakes were public. Criticism was brutal. Security flaws, privacy fears, government pressure. Zoom could have slowed down. It didn't. Eric made a choice. Every problem would be faced openly, every failure admitted publicly, every fix pushed immediately. Trust once earned quietly was now being tested loudly. And somehow, it held. Because Zoom wasn't built for glory. It was built for stress. The years nobody watched were the years that mattered. When the crisis lasted longer than anyone expected, people stopped asking when things would go back. They asked how long this would last. Zoom was no longer a backup. it became infrastructure. Courtrooms moved online, doctors diagnosed through screens, funerals were streamed in silence. This wasn't the future Eric Yuan imagined when he was fixing bugs at midnight years ago. But it was the future his decisions had prepared for. Competitors copied features, governments watched closely, investors circled, and the pressure changed shape. Now it wasn't about survival, it was about restraint. Growth can destroy what it touches if it's not disciplined. Eric knew this. He refused to turn Zoom into noise. No endless features, no forced social feeds, no attention traps, just clearer video, more stable connections, less friction between humans. While the world argued about Zoom fatigue, Eric listened. Meetings were shorter, audio improved, controls became simpler. The goal was never to keep people online, it was to let them leave sooner. This is where many founders fail. They confuse usage with value. Time spent with trust earned. Zoom chose the harder path, invisible success, the kind no one notices until it's gone. Being boring in a loud world has a cost. No headlines, no cult worship, no myth. While other founders became personalities, Eric Yuan stayed quiet. That silence was misunderstood. People assumed Zoom had peaked, that it was replaceable, that something cooler would come next. Eric didn't argue. He had learned long ago, as an immigrant with a rejected visa, that arguing rarely changes outcomes. Building does. Behind the scenes, Zoom hardened. Security wasn't patched for optics, it was rebuilt. Encryption became default. Compliance stopped being reactive. Enterprise trust became deliberate. Banks came, hospitals stayed, governments signed long contracts without press releases. This wasn't explosive growth, it was gravity. And gravity doesn't trend, it accumulates. Eric remembered the years when nobody returned his emails, when meetings were favors, when credibility had to be borrowed. Now he protected it fiercely. No shortcuts, no bending. Because trust once broken doesn't recover with updates, it collapses. And collapse is something Eric Yuan had already lived through before anyone knew his name. When the noise moved on, Zoom didn't chase it. New platforms arrived with flashier features, louder founders, sharper slogans. Eric watched them come and go without comment. He had seen this cycle before. Factories promised speed, then collapsed under pressure. Startups promised disruption, then vanished when costs arrived. Attention burned fast. Infrastructure endured quietly. Zoom wasn't trying to be loved anymore. It was trying to be necessary. Schools rewired their classrooms around it. Doctors redesigned patient care around it. Courts, universities, governments, they didn't ask for innovation. They asked for reliability. And reliability is boring until it disappears. Eric never forgot what it felt like to be invisible, to be unwanted, to be told no without explanation. So he built something that didn't need permission to stay. He hired people who didn't need applause, engineers who fixed things nobody would praise, teams that optimized milliseconds no user would notice until they were gone. This was not a comeback story. It was a survival story that never ended. Because Eric Yuan didn't believe success was permanent, he believed only discipline was. Quiet people understand something loud people never learn. Time doesn't reward confidence, it rewards consistency. Eric Yuan had lived long enough to see confident men disappear. He had watched brilliant speakers burn out their teams. He had seen founders mistake attention for durability. So when Zoom became part of everyday life, he didn't celebrate. He tightened. He shortened meetings inside the company. He forced leaders to sit with customer complaints. He personally read messages from teachers whose classes froze, from nurses whose calls dropped mid-diagnosis, from families who lost connection during final goodbyes. Each failure felt familiar, because failure had once been his only environment. The factory taught him this: machines don't care about your dreams, they care about maintenance. So he treated Zoom like a machine that must never stop. No heroic speeches, no grand vision decks, just pressure, humility, repetition. While others chased the next headline, Eric chased uptime. While others tried to be everywhere, he focused on being dependable in the worst moments. That's why when people were exhausted, when the world was overwhelmed, when patience ran out, Zoom didn't break. Not because it was perfect, but because it had been built by someone who expected things to fail and prepared anyway. When the world panics, calm becomes expensive. Suddenly, Zoom wasn't a product anymore. It was infrastructure. And infrastructure carries a kind of pressure most founders never face. Every outage felt personal. Every delay sounded like betrayal. Every flaw was amplified by millions of eyes staring at the same frozen screen. Eric Yuan didn't react like a celebrity CEO. He reacted like an immigrant who still remembers what it feels like to lose everything in one afternoon. He didn't blame engineers. He didn't hide behind PR language. He didn't pretend the problem was unexpected. He said something rare in technology. "This is on me." Inside the company, that sentence changed behavior faster than any incentive plan. People stopped optimizing for promotions. They started optimizing for reliability. Because when the founder takes the weight, no one dares to cut corners. Eric knew this instinctively. In the factory, when a supervisor blamed workers, machines broke more often. When a supervisor stood next to the line and absorbed the pressure, production stabilized. So he ran Zoom the same way, not from the top floor, but from the fault lines. Security concerns exploded. Governments questioned privacy. Schools worried about children. Corporations demanded guarantees no startup had ever been asked to provide. Zoom could have slowed, could have hidden behind growth numbers, could have said this is temporary demand. Eric didn't. He invested when others would have paused. He rebuilt systems while usage was still surging. He accepted short-term pain to avoid long-term distrust. That decision didn't make headlines, but it decided Zoom's future. Because trust, once broken, never scales again. And Eric Yuan understood something deeper than technology. People don't remember features. They remember whether you were there when things mattered. Talent is loud. Endurance is quiet. The world celebrates the loud part, the clever pitch, the viral demo, the overnight success story that fits in a headline. But companies that last are built by something far less glamorous. They are built by people who stay. Eric Yuan stayed through things no camera ever filmed. He stayed when Zoom was ignored because it wasn't flashy enough. He stayed when investors asked why he didn't chase consumer trends. He stayed when competitors with more money copied features faster. He stayed when growth was slow enough to feel embarrassing. And later, when growth was so fast it felt dangerous. That ability to remain steady came from years of instability. When you grow up crossing borders that reject you, you stop confusing motion with progress. Eric didn't chase speed. He chased consistency. Every decision asked the same question: will this still work when nobody is excited? That question shaped everything. Zoom didn't win because it had the most features. It won because it failed less often. It didn't dominate because it was louder. It dominated because it was predictable. And predictability in a chaotic world feels like relief. That's why teachers trusted it. Doctors depended on it. Families chose it for moments that mattered, not because Zoom was perfect, but because it showed up. Behind the scenes, Eric kept the same routines he had as a nobody. Early mornings, long reviews, patient listening. He never forgot the factory lesson. Machines don't care how smart you are. They care how attentive you stay. Endurance compounds when talent plateaus. Most people quit when applause fades. Eric never waited for applause. He learned long ago that silence doesn't mean failure. Sometimes it just means the work is still happening. And that mindset became Zoom's real advantage. Not the code, not the funding, not the timing. The refusal to disappear when things stop being exciting. There is a strange kind of pain that comes before recognition. Not rejection, not criticism, but being invisible while doing everything right. Eric Yuan lived inside that space for years. Zoom wasn't mocked anymore. It wasn't celebrated either. It simply existed quietly. In Silicon Valley, that's dangerous. If you fail loudly, people notice. If you win loudly, people follow. But if you improve silently, the world assumes you're standing still. Eric understood something most founders never do. Noise is not validation. Attention is not progress. So while others chased headlines, Zoom chased stability. They optimized for low bandwidth. They optimized for old laptops. They optimized for users who never read manuals. Those decisions look small, almost boring, but boring choices compound. Eric remembered what it felt like to be poor and ignored. When you have nothing, reliability matters more than brilliance. He didn't design Zoom for tech elites. He designed it for people who couldn't afford failure. That's why Zoom didn't break under pressure later. It had already been built under it. When the world finally needed Zoom, it wasn't ready by luck. It was ready because it had been waiting. Years of quiet preparation suddenly collided with global demand. And overnight, the invisible became essential. But here's the truth no one likes to say. The hardest part wasn't the explosion of growth. It was surviving the years before it. The years when nothing dramatic happened. The years when doubt crept in quietly. The years when quitting would have made sense to everyone else. Endurance doesn't look heroic while you're inside it. It just looks like another day you didn't give up. Eric Yuan didn't build Zoom by being the smartest person in the room. He built it by being the last one to leave. Chaos never announces itself politely. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn. It arrives all at once and demands answers immediately. For Eric Yuan, chaos arrived disguised as opportunity. At first, it didn't look dramatic. A few more users than usual, a spike in traffic, support tickets piling up faster than normal. Then the numbers stopped making sense. Thousands became millions. Millions became tens of millions. Schools, hospitals, governments, families, courts, funerals. Everyone needed the same thing at the same time. Connection. And suddenly, Zoom was no longer a product. It was infrastructure. This is where most companies collapse, not from weakness, but from growth they never prepared for. Servers strain, security cracks, public trust becomes fragile, every flaw becomes public, every mistake becomes global news. Eric didn't panic, because panic is a luxury for people who haven't suffered before. He remembered the factory floors, the immigration lines, the years of rejection letters. Pressure wasn't new to him, it was familiar. Instead of celebrating, he went quiet again. He canceled marketing victories, he delayed praise, he redirected everything into fixing problems. Security issues appeared, criticism exploded, governments questioned trust. And Eric did something rare. He apologized without defending his ego. He shut down feature development. 90 days, only fixes, only safety, only reliability, no spin, no excuses. In Silicon Valley, that move was almost offensive. You're supposed to grow fast and explain later. Eric chose the opposite. He slowed down in the middle of a storm. That decision saved Zoom, because trust, once broken at scale, never fully returns. Zoom didn't survive because it was perfect. It survived because its founder chose humility over pride. The world saw a company adjust in real time, not shouting, not blaming users, not hiding behind legal language, just fixing what mattered, and something shifted. Zoom stopped being that startup everyone suddenly uses. It became the default, the quiet tool that simply works. Eric Yuan never wanted attention. He wanted absence of friction. And when chaos tested that belief, it held. Because patience isn't passive. It's preparation disguised as waiting. Success doesn't end the struggle. It changes the price. When Zoom became essential, Eric Yuan lost something quietly. Privacy. His name was no longer just a signature on internal emails. It was on headlines, on government briefings, on opinion panels debating trust, power, responsibility. People who had never heard of him yesterday now expected perfection today. That's the hidden tax of relevance. Every outage felt personal. Every delay felt like betrayal. Every flaw became moral. Eric felt the weight immediately. Not because he feared criticism, but because he understood dependence. When people rely on your product to see their dying parents, to teach children, to keep courts running, you are no longer building software. You are holding moments. And moments don't forgive carelessness. He stopped sleeping well, not from ambition, from responsibility. Zoom's growth forced decisions that had no clean answers. Should governments have access? How much encryption is enough? Where does convenience end and safety begin? These weren't engineering problems anymore. They were ethical ones. Eric didn't rush them. Speed had built Zoom. Slowness would protect it. Inside the company, he repeated the same quiet principle he'd lived by his entire life. If we lose trust, nothing else matters. He invested heavily in security talent, invited critics inside, published mistakes publicly. That humility wasn't strategy, it was instinct. Because when you've been invisible most of your life, you learn that ego is optional. Fame never tempted him. Power didn't interest him. He still dressed simply, still spoke carefully, still listened more than he talked. Employees noticed something unusual. As Zoom's valuation exploded, Eric's behavior barely changed. No grand speeches, no victory laps, no cult of personality. He wasn't trying to be remembered. He was trying to be reliable. And that distinction mattered, because the companies that collapse after success usually fall to arrogance, not competition. Zoom didn't avoid mistakes. It avoided denial, and that's why it endured. Eric Yuan didn't win by being loud. He won by staying the same person after the world finally started watching. Years later, when the noise softened and the headlines moved on, Eric Yuan returned to something familiar. Silence, not absence, not retreat, but the calm that comes when urgency fades and intention remains. Zoom was no longer a miracle story. It was infrastructure. And infrastructure is invisible when it works. That was always his goal. He didn't want applause. He wanted dependability. People asked him in interviews what it felt like to become one of the most important founders in the world. He paused, then said something that confused many listeners. "I still feel like I'm catching up." That wasn't false modesty. It was memory. He remembered the factory floors where time moved slowly and futures felt sealed. He remembered the visa denials that taught him patience without promise. He remembered watching others pass him by while he stood still. Those experiences didn't disappear when success arrived. They became guardrails. Eric never believed he was entitled to anything, not opportunity, not growth, not loyalty. Everything to him was borrowed, and borrowed things must be cared for. That mindset shaped how Zoom matured. No reckless acquisitions, no flashy distractions, no obsession with domination, just steady improvement. Reliability over hype, stability over spectacle. He focused on the boring questions founders avoid once they're rich. How do we reduce friction for people who don't understand technology? How do we make communication feel human, not mechanical? How do we build something that still works when everything else breaks? Those questions didn't excite markets. They protected users. And in the long run, users decide what survives. Eric Yuan didn't become wealthy by chasing attention. He became essential by solving one unglamorous problem better than anyone else. Let people see each other, clearly, easily, without friction. That's all he ever wanted to do. No grand ideology, no empire dreams, just connection. And maybe that's the final lesson he never announces, but lives every day. You don't need to be loud to matter. You don't need permission to persist. And you don't need to be seen to be essential. Some of the most powerful forces in the world work quietly, like patience, like consistency, like a man who kept building while nobody was watching. If you trace Eric Yuan's life backward, you won't find a single moment that looks like destiny. No prophecy, no mentor opening a door at the perfect time, no sudden breakthrough that erased the past. What you find instead is repetition, trying, waiting, being ignored, trying again. That rhythm shaped him more than success ever could. He learned early that effort doesn't guarantee reward. Only survival earns another attempt. When people talk about Zoom today, they talk about timing. They say the world was ready. They say the pandemic made it inevitable. That's comforting because it removes responsibility from the builder. But inevitability is a lie we tell after outcomes are clear. Zoom wasn't inevitable. Eric Yuan could have quit after the first visa rejection, or the fifth, or the eighth. He could have stayed comfortable inside WebEx, could have accepted hierarchy instead of frustration, could have decided that some ideas are simply not meant to happen. Most people do, not because they are weak, but because exhaustion feels rational after long silence. Eric didn't push because he believed success was guaranteed. He pushed because stopping felt worse. That distinction matters. He wasn't chasing victory, he was avoiding regret. And regret, when you've carried it long enough, becomes unbearable. So he kept going quietly, not loudly enough to be noticed, not confidently enough to inspire crowds, just steadily enough to remain alive inside his own ambition. When Zoom finally worked, it didn't transform him, it revealed him. The same patience, the same restraint, the same respect for unseen labor. Even at the peak, he never acted like a conqueror. He acted like someone who knows how easily everything can disappear, because he lived that version already, many times. That's why his story isn't about technology. It's about endurance without applause, about building faith in yourself when no evidence supports it, about choosing long silence over short comfort, about continuing forward while the world offers no feedback. Most people won't relate to success, but many will recognize that quiet stretch where nothing happens and quitting feels reasonable. That's where Eric Yuan lived for decades, and that's why his achievement feels different. Not louder, not flashier, just real. If there's one truth his life leaves behind, it's this: you don't need the world to believe in you to keep moving. You only need to refuse to disappear before your work has a chance to speak. And sometimes that refusal changes everything.